racism. I am your host, Paz Simpson, the happiness engineer, along with my co host, Mr. Paul Hoyt. Together, we examine many of your commonly accepted beliefs that lead to your uncontrollable behavioral biases. So, Paul, my brother, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty darn good. A little tired. I worked at the local stadium for a World Cup soccer event last night, and the game started at 9 p.m. local time. So, they let me go home early, and I got to bed about 1 a.m., which is, pretty late for an old geezer like me. I know that's young I mean, it's early for young kids like you, Paz, but but it's old for me. So I'm just a little bit tired. Hey, today we are going to talk about the
And it's
important.
funny that you say that before you, because
Yeah, yeah.
I manage. I've been blessed to do some business management for up and coming rapper slash producer.
Uh huh.
So they always try to get me to go to the nightclub, and I remind them that the grays in his beard allows me to do day parties only.
Ah,
I got
that's
it.
good.
Remember, so we're gonna date ourselves here, right? Remember, there on Fox 5 they used to go. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? You know, I want to be home by 10 o'clock.
I like it. It's 9 o'clock. Have you wished your grandpa good night? There's a good one. Hey, today we want to talk about
Hmm.
role models. I'm going to start out in an unusual place, and I'm going to just share a poem I wrote the other day. It's called Being Nice. You are more likely to be nice to me if I am nice to you. And if someone sees us being nice to each other, they'll probably be nice too. That's because attitudes and behaviors are contagious. We tend to copy whatever we see. So when we are nice to everyone we meet, they're much more likely to be nice and sweet to everyone, just like you and me. Now,
I
the,
love that.
the key line in that is that attitudes and behaviors are contagious. We tend to copy whatever we see. And it's especially true of young people. And that's why it is so important for young people to have role models, to have peoples of power and influence and authority who will model the behaviors and the attitudes that we want our children to have. If we want them to be people of integrity, if we want them to be respectful, if we want them to be friendly and kind, if we want them to be courageous, we need to make sure that they are exposed to role models who exhibit that energy, who share those attitudes and behaviors. And frankly, here in the United States, we have done a piss poor job of doing that. A piss poor job of doing that. We've forgotten the importance of character. We've forgotten the importance of ethics. And we have chosen to put people in positions of authority and influence who are terrible, terrible freaking role models for our children.
I think it's. I think that you are so right. Growing up, Charles Barkley was one of my favorite basketball players. I loved his aggressiveness. I loved that he was an undersized person, being an undersized person playing. But I was not allowed to cheer for Charles Barkley.
Hmm.
And I wasn't allowed to cheer for Charles Barkley because Charles Barkley had a commercial. He had a commercial that said, "I am not a role model."
Mm.
And he gave all of the reasons why he's not a role model. And he basically told parents to raise their own kids. And my mom was so offended by that messaging, because whether he wanted to admit it or not, there were young kids like myself who were looking up to him. There
Yeah.
were young kids like myself who were patterning our aggression based on his. And my mother was so offended that he said that he wasn't a role model, trying to take himself out of the responsibility that being a superstar had.
Yeah.
That right there changed a lot on, for me, on who a role model was. My role models were no longer uh, big name athletes. My
Yeah.
role models were no longer, you know, growing up in Harlem, you know, unfortunately, a lot of the role models were the big time drug dealers,
Yeah.
right? Because they did do a lot of bad, but they also did do a lot of good. Like our neighborhood drug dealers, you know, you can, Christmas time, they provide Christmas presents,
Hmm.
you know, Thanksgiving, they provided turkeys, you know, they
Wow.
gave back to the community, they took care of that community, you know. But I'm also from Harlem, where that was the norm, because the role model for the criminals was Bumpy Johnson, right? Eh, who was someone of respect. You know, he was the gangster and the gentleman. Always wore a suit. Always carried himself a certain way. Always took care of the neighborhood. So those who came after him modeled the same. You know, where that model changed was in the 1980s, when crack cocaine hit, and then it became like the wild wild west. So there was no more order, you
Yeah.
know. And not to say that criminality should have, we shouldn't be mystifying criminality, so I want to make sure that I'm clear here. We shouldn't be turning them into folklore like they've done in many of the movies. Like, I grew up in the neighborhoods where they made movies. You know, I still take care of nephews of people that were in movies. You know, if you've seen American Gangster, you know, I still take care of some of the older guys who lived in that movie. When they come home from prison, you know, I'm someone that they check in with, you know, to make sure that they don't go back. I say that to say, right, role models. One of the A chief of police in my city, he's no longer the chief anymore, but he was the chief at the time. Glenn Granets said that the difference between my generation and the generation currently is the music, right? And the and and I had to think about that because I grew up in hip hop. So what we realized in doing our research is that there have been more performing artists murdered in the last 7 years than
Wow.
it did during the first 45 years of hip
Wow.
hop,
Wow.
right? Because the messaging has changed, right? The role models have changed, and there are no outlets. So, what that captain said to me was, the difference between your generation and this generation is you guys listen to drug dealer music. Even though it wasn't the best, it still gave you a hope that you can reach the American dream. This generation listens to drug user music. So it
Oh,
keeps them depressed. It keeps them not reaching for goals, and they're more likely to harm themselves.
wow. That's an interesting subject. Well, Paz, I'm proud of you being a good role model for your communities with your attitudes, with your kindness, with the way that you help other people, with the way that you have recovered from the challenges that you have faced in your life, which are a great many. Um, and if I can leave one message to everybody that's listening to this podcast, it is that you are a role model. whether you accept it or not. You are a role model to someone younger than you, perhaps your own children, perhaps the kids next door. You are a role model to someone who sees the way that you treat women, who sees the way that you treat the people passing on the street. We all look around and we have a tendency to copy those behaviors and attitudes that we see, especially when we see them coming from people of power and influence, people that have been elected, people that are leading organizations in any way, just preachers and teachers and outspoken celebrities and entertainers. You know, we look, it's instinctual. It's part of the human experience to want to be like people who are strong, because we know that if we follow them, then we can be strong ourselves. It's the whole, you know, it's like the wolf pack or the bison herd that follows the biggest, strongest male in that particular tribe, that particular little pod. We do that too as human beings. And when we recognize that, then we can look at the power that we have to be a positive role model, to share, you know, who we are, the challenges we've gone through, the ways that we have overcome the hardships that we've experienced in our life, and the way that we have chosen to be the best person that we can be, that we have chosen to be kind, that we've chosen to be loving, that we've chosen to be wise, that we've chosen to be helpful to anyone and everyone. And that's what I love about you, and I love about the opportunity that we have with the Curing Racism podcast and all the other things that we do to share our love and light with the world and encourage other people to do the same.
I was blessed in college that the biggest kid on the football team, and he's probably going to be watching this because we're broadcasting live on LinkedIn, was a gentleman named Richie Owens. Richie Owens winded up playing for the Miami Dolphins. He played for the Washington Redskins. You know,
Wow.
he was 6'7", probably 270 pounds, all muscle. But Richie Owens painted flowers, right? And he painted the most amazing flowers, right? And that dichotomy at such a young age allowed me to realize that we can be both um, aggressive when necessary and also soft when needed. You know, I think a lot of us have been taught that we can only be one type of man, right? Especially us men over 40 have been taught not to cry, right? It's not okay for men to cry, right? So there are many bad habits that we picked up along the line, but right, there are some those of us who chose to get in tune, right, with ourselves. There are some great habits we've also picked up along the way. One may be to learn to cry. One may be to learn to hug. Another may be just to learn to accept people for whom they are. No one has to be perfect, you know. All they have to be is themselves. And sometimes that is even better than perfect, right?
Oh,
Um, yeah, there's a great song, um, All of Me, right? It says, all of me loves all of you, loves your perfect imperfections, right? Your perfect imperfections, right? We all perfect imperfections. And if we can love those things, appreciate those things, not only do we get to be better role models for the people that we encounter, right? We find that we can experience a lot more love.
I love that. I love that. I love doing these podcasts with you. And for those of you who are listening, if you feel like that Paz and I can be good role models for your organization of people who love each other, care each other, regardless of our superficial differences. If we can help people in your organization see through the superficial differences that divide them so that they can discover the common values that will unite them, we'd love to have that conversation with you. Go to curingracism.com, send us a message. We'll be happy to talk to you about the ways that we can support your organization and be the role models that your company, that your family, that your community needs, because that's what we'd love to do. We'd love to help share with you the love that we share for each other, the loves that we have for ourselves, so that by doing so, in sharing that, that you would learn to love each other even more than you do today.
And I love that. And I want people to realize that you don't have to be famous. You don't have to be popular. You don't have to be well known, right? To be a role model. All you have to do is wake up today and walk outside. As long as someone is younger than you, as long as someone can be impressed by you. And impressed doesn't mean that they're ooh goo goo gaga, but your energy, your experience creates a lasting impression, whether it's good or bad, right? We get to be these role models, that people think that it's only someone on television. We lost a great role model um, recently, Mr. Danny Simmons. Um, Most of the world knows his younger brothers because they were famous, right? You had Russell Simmons, who was the founder of Def Jam and one of the real architects of hip hop. And then his even younger brother, Run, right, from Run DMC, who was the most famous out of the brothers, but the most influential was Danny. See, Danny's leadership didn't get him on the television as much as his brothers, didn't get his name screamed as loud as his brothers. He doesn't have the memorable night at Madison Square Garden when everybody took off one shoe while his brothers sang My Adidas and we all held our Adidas in the air. Right? He doesn't have that, but he has the influence to say that he was the patriarch of the family. Many of the milestones that family had made, things like deaf poetry, things like the Rush Foundation, where they actually took some of the millions and millions of dollars that family has made and actually made a difference in arts and entertainment, made made an impact in education, right? Those things were done by Danny. I live in Pennsylvania right now, where we have two Danny Simmons murals on the wall, but the impact that he's had over the art community. Um, we have a young up and coming artist who I said I do some business management for. That came from him performing in front of a Danny Simmons mural, right? That that trust came because people saw him in front of a space in a place that they thought was safe, right? So Danny was able to open up doors that many people may not have known was opened by Danny because he wasn't one that was looking for the spotlight. He wasn't one that was looking for attention, but he was one that lived in intention, right? If all of us took a moment to decide to live in intention, right? His intention was as a visual artist, as a poet, his intention was to spread love and to open up doors for underprivileged artists. His intention was to spark a light that leads to a more brighter creative economy. What if we all were intentional about our life and our work? It may not make us famous, but it will make us infamous.
Well, sounds like he was a great role model for you and many, many others in your community. And as we close, just to wrap that back and loop that back around, just to take a few minutes and figure out who your favorite role models are. Who do you want to be like? Whose success, whose power, whose strength do you want to emulate and perhaps even envy? Um, and understand the power of role models in your life, then you can understand the power that you have to be a positive role model for other people.
Yes, to know that you are good enough, your story is great enough, and your power is within. Reach within, because we can't live without.
Love that. Always great to talk to you, Paz.
Yes, yes.
Thanks for
And
listening,
if you
everybody.
want, yes, and if you want to have us in your home, have us in your school, have us in your business, please go to curingracism.com. Reach out to myself, reach out to Paul, reach out to the both of us. Tell us how we can become, inspirational, impactful for you, your family, your community, your job, your business, because we all need to move together. One smile, one connection, one heart at a time.
Love you. Talk soon.